Hello everyone, this is Logan59XP here with another episode of the Nin-Cast live on May 26th of 2022, and yes, that's right, we're resurrecting the Nin-Cast live. Well, not that it was ever really dead, but these are supposed to be kind of, offshoots. This is not supposed to take over the main series. The core of the Nin-Cast was and will always will be for the foreseeable future. Obviously, things can change, but for right now, the Nin-Cast primarily is still going to be pre-recorded and then uploaded later. But there are exceptions where I feel like doing it live on the spot might be better, and I think this is one of them. So this is a topic I've wanted to do a video on for a few months now, as someone that's a big fan of this franchise and has noticed very astutely that they have not talked about it that much. It has not, both Nintendo hasn't talked about it that much, and the fan base hasn't talked, or at least the general Nintendo community or gaming community doesn't talk about this game. And I want to talk about it because I really find the whole thing very strange. But before we talk about that, we gotta go ahead and go back to the beginning. So, Splatoon 3 was announced in the February 2021 Nintendo Direct. The first Nintendo Direct in like a year after we had, all the partner showcases and, oh, will Nintendo Directs be dead? Are they gonna die? Are Nintendo Directs go in the way of the dodo? And then in the end, well, it did seem like for a brief period of time that might actually happen. Like I remember, I believe it was January when they had the big blowout for Bowser's what was it called? Bowser's Fury. That wasn't a direct. It was literally just like a little Twitter drop or whatever. And that's when people were like, oh shoot, they're talking about stuff like Bowser's Fury and it's just like random Twitter drops. Ooh, maybe that means that directs really are gone. And then, of course, we were all proven wrong. Well, I personally was mostly holding on to Nintendo Direct still being a thing. But if you want my whole thoughts on that, you can go ahead and rewind to my Nintendo in 2021 What I Want to See discussion from last year. You can hear me talk about how Nintendo Directs aren't dead because, come on, they're not going to kill them. They're too popular to kill. And they make all the sense in the world. But whatever. I'm getting distracted. Point is, Splatoon 3 was the very last game that was announced in that Nintendo Direct and was, in my opinion, easily the highlight, with of course Pyra and Mythra being in second. But in that Direct there were two big things we got out of it: Pyra and Mythra in Splatoon 3. But one thing I noticed at the time, again, we'll get to the future, but even at the time when it was announced, one thing I noticed was it didn't seem like that many people were hyped for it. Like, yes, there were people that were hyped for it, but the general consensus to me was basically just a resounding, oh, that's cool, we're getting another Splatoon game. And that was it. And that felt really weird, because Splatoon, in my opinion, I think it's undeniable at this point, but in my opinion, is one of the big franchises now. Now, is it as big as Mario or Zelda or Pokemon or Smash? No, it is not. I'm not even going to come close to saying that it's on par with those franchises from a pure popularity and reach standpoint. Of course not. It hasn't been around nearly as long. Mario's been around for 30 years. Zelda's been around for 30 years. Smash is their big hype machine. And Pokemon, of course, is freaking Pokemon. There's an entire company dedicated to Pokemon. That is how big that series is. It's so big that it's not even really a proper Nintendo franchise. But that's a whole, what is a Nintendo franchise? But that's a video for another day. The whole what is and isn't first party. That's a whole other conversation. I actually do want to do a video on it at some point in some form, but anyways, it's not as big as those. But considering how new the franchise is, this franchise launched in 2015. This franchise is like only 6 or 7 years old, and it has, and how far it has gone in that short amount of time is astounding. Now, here's the big asterisk, and if I'm being real here, this is probably where the majority of the... So, of course, the title of the stream is "Where in the World is Splatoon 3?" which is the PG title I used for the thumbnail. But what it really should be is "Where in the hell is Splatoon 3?" But a lot of that popularity, a lot of the popularity Splatoon has garnered has not been from the West. It's been from Japan. So that might be the real actual answer to this whole why is nobody talking about it thing, because it's more popular in Japan than it is here. But but again, we'll get to that in a second. So it was announced in February. It was the big finale game, and despite no one had a problem with it, of course, but no one was really excited for it. No one was hyped for it. Except for like I know there's a bunch of Splatoon YouTubers that do exist. They were hyped for it, but the general community wasn't. And I found that very strange considering how big the franchise is. And that's a big deal. Like Splatoon 3, that's a big deal. And yet nobody really cared that much. And that felt really weird to me. Again, is it as big as like Breath of the Wild 2? Is it as big as Prime 4? Is it as big as those other games? No, it's not. I'm not saying it is. But compared to some of the other games that have been announced since then, like even Xenoblade, a lot of people are excited for Xenoblade 3. Even though that game is way more niche than Splatoon. And yet it feels, and again, maybe this is just me. Maybe it's because I don't use Twitter anymore. I haven't used Twitter since 2019. And because of that, I'm out of the loop of the community compared to what I used to be. So that might be a big part of the reason why I feel like there's not that many people that are excited for this game. But I remember even Splatoon 1, the first game, had more hype going into it than this game has. Both Splatoon 1 and 2 had more hype going into it than this game has. But again, I do believe there's another reason for that, but we'll get to it later. But, okay, so I'm kind of just going on and on here without really moving forwards, okay? Point is, the game was announced. People were excited, question mark, that it was coming, but no one was really like losing their minds over it like people do with Smash or Zelda, or hell, even Xenoblade I think got a bigger reaction as some people in Splatoon did. And that feels weird because again, Xenoblade is a much smaller franchise than Splatoon. And yeah, I feel like there's more people hyped for that game than this one. But okay, moving on. So, it was announced in February. And here comes the first big hurdle for this game. E3 2021 comes around. We get, Metroid Dread. We get a new trailer for Zelda. We get Kazuya. We get all these announcements. But you want to know the one big game that wasn't there that would have actually made sense? Like, obviously, people would have loved to see like Prime 4, but we got Dread, so it was like, oh, okay, whatever. We don't get Prime 4, but we got Dread, so it's cool. We got Kazuya, we got Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, and we got Metroid Dread. But you want to know what we didn't get? That's right, Splatoon 3. Even though it was literally the finale of their previous direct, they did not say a single word about that game at E3, and that was extremely baffling to me. Like, what? How do you not showcase one of your marquee games? Was I expecting a big blowout? Of course not, but I was expecting a trailer, just the one trailer. That was all I was expecting. We didn't get that at all. Now, at the time, I didn't have a problem with this because, again, we got Kazuya. I mean, Kazuya wasn't the biggest character ever, but still, we got a new Smash character. We got, Metroid Dread was the big, holy shit moment. The big, Etika level. Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, we see, Arlo dies a second time after Prime 4 years before. We got our big, like Etika level, holy, announcement. So, and of course we got more Breath of the Wild too. So it wasn't a big deal. It was easy to overlook. Okay, it's weird. It's really weird that Splatoon's not here when it was literally announced in the last direct, and it's one of their big upcoming games. But okay, fine. They had Breath of the Wild 2, they had Smash, and they had Metroid Dread. Okay, cool. September rolls around. And Splatoon was showcased. We got our first look at the campaign and a little bit more of the multiplayer, but it was mainly at the campaign reveal. And you want to know what happened? Nobody talked about it. Nobody cared. And you want to know the exact reason why? Because Splatoon 3 had the unfortunate circumstance, I don't know, whatever, unfortunate, fortunate, whatever you want to call it. It came right after the Mario movie. literally right after we got Chris Pratt as Mario, Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, and Jack Black as Bowser. Literally right after that freaking thing that completely overshadowed everything else in the Direct. That was the only thing in the Direct anyone talked about, pretty much. Splatoon, they had the next Splatoon trailer right after that. It was doomed from the outset. It was going to get it had no chance of getting any spotlight because they had to talk about Mario first, and because the Mario stuff was so weird, it completely overshadowed Splatoon. Okay, so that's 2 strikes against it. It wasn't at E3, and when they did show it in September, it got completely overshadowed by the Mario movie stuff because they talked about the Mario movie right before it. Okay, that's 2 strikes against Splatoon. 2 strikes. Okay. Fast forward to I think the next Direct, I think, is the next time we heard something. Was, yeah, so the February Direct, which at the time of this stream, of this video, is the newest official Direct. You know, not counting the Indie Worlds or any of that. Like the newest proper Direct is still the February one. We'll talk about the future in a second. But okay, February. We finally got the reveal of the co-op mode. Now, okay, first things first. So when it comes to Splatoon, there's generally a pattern of how they reveal things. Normally, when they first reveal the game, so you know, E3 2014, flashback to the E3 2014 Nintendo Direct, which to this day is still one of my favorite Directs of all time. The E3, you know, the digital event E3 2014, that's a classic Direct. That's an absolute classic Direct to me. And the final game that they showcased in that Direct was Splatoon. That was when Splatoon was first announced. And that game was revealed with the multiplayer. The multiplayer was the focus of that first trailer. And then fast forward to the November 2014 Direct, the Direct that gave us Majora's Mask 3D, those of you that remember. That Direct gave us our first look at the campaign. And then the Direct after that, which was in January, which is the Direct where we got the new 3DS XL revealed for the West, and we didn't get the regular new 3DS, and there was a whole kerfuffle with that. But anyways, I'm reminiscing too much about the old Nintendo Directs of the Iwata era. But okay, enough of that. And then in January, we get kind of our big blowout. We of course got a Splatoon Direct later that revealed even more stuff, but by January we kind of knew enough about the game to really get excited for it. Like by the time we reached January, I was like, okay, I'm getting this game. Like when the game was first announced, I was like, this seems interesting, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna get it. By the time we hit January, when we got the reveal of like Inkopolis Plaza, it was Plaza. Yeah, Square is what is it? Yeah, Square is the second game. Plaza is the first game. We got Inkopolis Plaza. We got to see all the shops, the customization, all that stuff. By that point, I was fully sold on the game. And, then I played all of the global test fires when they came out, even when they were at 3 a.m. in the morning. Then, I got the game day 1. Then I got Splatoon 2 day 1. I'm going to get Splatoon 3 day 1. I'm all in on Splatoon. I've been in on Splatoon since day 1, basically. I wasn't sold on it 100% when it was first revealed, but I was there day 1. I actually still have the code. Okay. Well, I'll stop with the flashbacks, but last one before we move on here. So, remember in the Splatoon Direct, the first Splatoon Direct for the first game, so May 2015, before the game came out, they announced that if you pre-ordered Splatoon and I believe GameStop, this might have applied to more areas, but at least GameStop, you would get a code for the Splatoon Mii costumes for Smash Wii U. I still have that receipt with the code on it. I don't think I ever ended up using it because by the time the Mii costumes actually came out, I just ended up buying them and I just gave away the code on Twitter, I think. But yeah, I still have that. Like the GameStop receipt with the, hey, register, in summer 2015 when the Mii costume comes out, just put this, man, 2014, 2015. That's such a nostalgic era of Nintendo for me. I'm getting off track. Here. So, point is, there's a pattern. Multiplayer, campaign, general overview. Splatoon 2 was announced at the Switch presentation in 2017. Which to this date is Nintendo's last formal press conference. And we got multiplayer, just like the first game. It was all about the multiplayer. You know, we had the new theme song, and they showed off the multiplayer, and we got to see some new abilities. Cool. Fast forward a few months later, and then we got the reveal of actually not the campaign, but the co-op mode, Salmon Run. And then at the end of the ARMS Direct, like a month later, we got the reveal of the campaign. And then, of course, and later on, we got more information in like the Splatoon 2 Direct. Okay? Splatoon 3, okay? Okay, so I'll admit, the pattern is not perfect. But it's a pretty generally consistent pattern. Okay, so Splatoon 3 gets announced February 2021. Multiplayer. So we get the remix of the theme song, do 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 do. It's all cool and everything. We got a cool remix. We got to see new stuff. We got to see even a little bit of what might be actually part of the campaign, even though that wasn't the focus. But it was mainly about the multiplayer. We got to see more multiplayer stuff. That was the focus of the original reveal. Fast forward to September, we get the campaign reveal, which I believe is called Return of the what is it called? Return of the something. There's actually a name for it. The previous two campaigns didn't have a formal name, but there is a formal name for this one. I believe it's called Return of the Mammalands, I believe is the title of the Splatoon 3 campaign. And then in February, we got the reveal of a co-op mode. But not a new one. It was just, okay, Salmon Run is coming back. Which is cool, but that was kind of it. And now here we are waiting on more information. So, it's funny, because when you actually hear me explain that all, it makes it sound like, okay, isn't everything just going as it should? In a way, it is, but here's the reason why it feels weird. Again, let's rewind. They didn't have it at E3, Strike 1. And it was in the September Direct, but it was completely overshadowed by Mario, Strike 2. And then the next time we saw it, like 4 or 5 months later, it was just the announcement that Salmon Run was coming back. And it would have some new features, like the ability to share eggs with each other, I think was one of them. Which is cool. Like, that's cool. It's cool that Salmon Run is coming back. I like Salmon Run. I'm glad it's coming back. But I'd be lying if I said I was expecting a new mode. I mean, hell, in the video I made last year, you can still watch them. They're still up. Well, of course they're still up. Why would I take them down already? It wouldn't make any sense. But like last year when I did those trio of Splatoon 3 videos after the game was announced, I talked about how I talked about Salmon Run in that video, but I also said I don't think Salmon Run is going to come back. I think it's going to be a new mode. So the fact that we waited, 5 or 6 months or whatever, or 4 or 5, 6 months, and it was just Salmon Run is coming back. It's like, okay, cool. But like, did that justify the amount of time we had to wait? I mean, of course, in the grand scheme of things, that's not that bad. I mean, I could be one of those people that's been waiting and dying to hear more on Prime 4. So I mean, I'm really a no. I really don't. So I guess in some respects, I really am not in any position to complain about. Really, we waited 4 to 5 months just for Salmon Run to come back when people have been waiting since 2017. Well, 2019, but 2017, 2019 for more on Prime 4. But oh man. Okay, so. No show at E3, Strike 1. Overshadowed by Mario in the September Direct, Strike 2. And while this may sound extreme for me to count this as a Strike 3, and it's not as much of a strike, maybe it's like a half strike, waiting 4 to 5 months just to get more, just to be like, oh yeah, Salmon Run is coming back. I'm going to give that like half a strike. It's not a full strike, but I'm going to give that half a strike. So I mean, that's not a problem with the marketing necessarily, but that's still like, but it still kind of wraps around to the whole fact of, I don't really understand what Nintendo's strategy for marketing this game is, because that's kind of what this all wraps around to. I may be taking a long time to get to this one point, but this is what the crux of the entire discussion is. The title of the stream is, Where in the World is Splatoon 3? And yeah, where in the world is Splatoon 3? They haven't said that much about it, even though it's coming out in only a couple of months. It's one thing when it's a year away. It's another thing when it's only a couple of months away. Now, to be fair, before everyone says it, I know that obviously The game is coming out in September now. It's not coming out in July like we all thought. Now Xenoblade is in July, and Splatoon is in September. So it makes some sense to hold things back a little until the not E3 Direct that we'll be talking about in a bit, or maybe even waiting for the big Splatoon 3 blowout Direct that we'll get at some point. Maybe we'll get that in July as a makeup for the game not coming out then. But I don't know, it just feels weird. This whole situation just feels really weird to me, because for a game as big as this, they have not been doing enough to push. Like Splatoon 1 and 2 got more marketing and push than this did. I know it did, because I was around for when both of those games were being marketed. I know that they pushed Splatoon 1. Okay, they probably pushed Splatoon 1 more than 2, only because, Splatoon was a new IP, so they had to push it more at the time. But I know 1 and 2 have gotten more push than this game has. And here... So I have a couple of theories as to why they're barely saying anything about the game. All things considered. Now again, we know more about Splatoon 3 than we do Breath of the Wild 2 or Prime 4. But considering it's only coming out in a couple of months, I feel like we should know a lot more than we do. I feel like we should know, not literally everything in the game, but we should know most. We should know most. We still haven't seen the hub yet. We have that shot from the trailer, from the reveal show. We still don't know what the hub looks like. We still don't know what the shops look like. We still don't know how that new card system works, where you can have the little achievement cards on the windscreen. There's the whole thing with apartments. Are apartments in the game? There's still a bunch of stuff we don't really know the nitty-gritty of, and I feel like we should know more of that. Not all of it, because again, they're gonna wait for a big Splatoon 3 Direct to drop more information on that. But I feel like we should know more than we do. And it feels weird. It feels weird. So, yeah. Now, I will give him this. We have gotten some more information in more recent times. They have started to slowly roll out information, but not fast enough for my liking, if I'm being honest. Okay, so the last time we really heard anything big about the game was in April, which was only a month ago. So fair enough. And obviously it makes sense that they're going to be focusing on, they've been marketing the hell out of Strikers right now. Strikers is clearly the game that they're really pushing right now, and it makes sense. It's Strikers. A lot of people really wanted Strikers. It makes sense to push it, but still. Strikers, and to a lesser extent, Three Hopes. Three Hopes? Is it Three Hopes? Nah. Is it Three Hopes? I feel like it is Three Hopes. Whatever. The new Warriors game that's based on Three Houses. Those games are coming out in June, so it makes sense to push those games more. But those games are not Splatoon level. I'm sorry, they just... Okay, obviously Three Hopes isn't, but even Strikers, as popular and beloved as Strikers is, it's not as big or as important as Splatoon. I know I'm going to sound really biased right now saying that, but it really isn't. Strikers is not as important as Splatoon, and it feels weird that they've talked way more about Strikers than Splatoon, even though Strikers was only announced in February. It was only announced in February, and it's had more stuff than Splatoon has had in a year and a half. That's really weird. That is weird that they have talked about even Xenoblade. Now, granted, Xenoblade again was only announced in the February Direct, but even I still feel like we know more about that game than we do Splatoon 3. Now, to be fair, I'm not a Xenoblade fan. I do want to get into those games, but I am not currently a Xenoblade fan. I'm just a Smash pleb that plays Pyra and Shulk in Smash. I don't know much about them outside of that, for the most part. Outside of some little tidbits here and there. But even though I'm not really following the Xenoblade news that closely, the impression I get is that we've gotten more notable information out of that than we have Splatoon. Even though, again, it was announced in February of this year, even though Splatoon was announced in February of last year. And it's just, I guess what this really all boils down to is why? Why are they taking so long to talk in detail about this game when it's their big game of the year now? I know that's going to be a controversial statement right there. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me when I say it's their big game of the year. And a month or two ago, it wouldn't have been. Obviously, if Zelda was still coming out this year, yes, absolutely, 100%. Zelda would be the game. That's not in debate. And I would be more excited for Zelda than Splatoon. But man. But now that Zelda's not coming out this year, what are Nintendo's big games this year? They have 3 big games this year: Splatoon 3, Xenoblade 3, and Scarlet and Violet. Although Scarlet and Violet is not okay. So here's the thing: when I say that it's their big game of the year, it's not going to be their biggest sales success of the year. That will obviously be Scarlet and Violet. But again, Scarlet and Violet, that's like the Pokemon company. It's kind of its own thing. That's the thing about Pokemon. Again, we'll talk about this another time. But the whole thing where Pokemon, it's a Nintendo franchise, but also not really. Like it is, but it isn't. Because Nintendo doesn't really... Because Nintendo's not in charge of Pokemon. They're in charge of Mario, they're in charge of Zelda, they're in charge of Metroid, they're in charge of Donkey Kong, they're in charge of Zelda, they're in charge of all these other franchises. Hell, they're probably more in charge of Kirby and Fire Emblem, even though they don't fully own or really work on those IPs anyway. But Pokemon is its own completely different beast. It is like there's Nintendo, and then there's the Pokemon Company. And the Pokemon Company, I have to actually check the numbers. But I think the Pokemon Company is actually bigger than Nintendo themselves. I could be wrong on that. Maybe, but at least I feel like for years now, it's at least felt, again, I might not be correct on this, but it has at least felt like the Pokemon Company is way bigger than Nintendo themselves, or at least bigger in some extent. But I'm getting off track. This is a Splatoon discussion. But okay, Pokemon Company is responsible for Scarlet and Violet, so let's not count that. Well, let's ignore Scarlet and Violet for a second, which, by the way, we also barely know anything about that game. But again, but the reason why we haven't heard anything on that game is because the Pokemon Company controls the information flow on that. And of course, we're going to get a Pokemon Presents at some point. And so ignore Pokemon for a second. Let's ignore Scarlet and Violet. Let's pretend it doesn't exist. That leaves us with Splatoon and Xenoblade. Both games... While both of them are not being developed by Nintendo, both of them are being published by Nintendo, and the marketing for both games are controlled by Nintendo. Xenoblade's marketing, from as far as I can tell, is in the hands of Nintendo, not Monolith Soft. Unlike Pokemon, where the Pokemon Company is in complete control for the marketing for all the games, whether it's mobile, console, anything, because they're on a whole different level of existence, basically. So we got Xenoblade 3, a game that a lot of people are looking forward to. And I have no doubts that's going to be a good game. But Xenoblade is not Splatoon. Xenoblade sells, what, a couple million copies at most? Splatoon sells 10 million copies. And obviously sales aren't everything. But which is the bigger franchise? I mean, which is a bigger deal for the Switch and for Nintendo? It's obvious which one is a bigger deal. And again, despite the fact that Xenoblade was announced in February, I feel like it has gotten more hype and more anticipation, just more even just information than Splatoon has in the same time span. Or in a longer time span, I should say. So I don't know. I think I'm repeating myself over and over here. Apologies for that. This is kind of just this is a completely off the cuff discussion with no real form or no real structure. I mean, I know I do these for the Marvel discussions, but those are supposed to be like that, because that's supposed to be me, coming home from the theater and immediately, pressing the record button, or me finishing the last episode and pressing the record button. But this is just a completely off the cuff discussion that I'm just doing for the hell of it, really. So apologies if this is a very, not well put together discussion. I'll admit to that. Apologies in advance for that. But okay. I think at this point you get where you understand what I'm trying to say here. A game as Splatoon should not be as ignored as it is by both Nintendo themselves and also the community. I've been talking a lot about how Nintendo has been kind of ignoring Splatoon 3, or at least not giving it the treatment it deserves, in my opinion, compared to other titles. But I guess we can talk about the community real quick. And I'm gonna put out my theories as to why I think the community is not super hyped for this game. And when I say the community, I'm talking about the general, just like the general Nintendo, and even beyond that, just gaming community in general. Even though really no one cares about Splatoon outside the Nintendo community, but whatever. Here's the reasons I'm guessing as to why no one in the there is a dedicated Splatoon community, and I know they're excited, but the general community isn't. The general Nintendo community is just kind of like, oh yeah, Splatoon 3, that's coming. And that's kind of it. They don't really care. Okay, here's my theory, a couple of theories as to why. The first reason, everything I just talked about, how Nintendo has not been marketing the game enough and has not been talking about the game enough compared to other titles. That's the first one. The second one, and this one is, I don't know, I'm just going to say it. The second reason is the fact that we already have a Splatoon game on the Switch. Like, we already have Splatoon 2. And Splatoon 2 is still a perfectly fine game. It hasn't gotten any major updates in years, but the game is still there. It's not selling Mario Kart 8 levels, but the game, it's still around. People still play. I haven't played it on a regular basis in a while, to be fair. Because I've already put in like 200 something hours, so I'm just waiting for Splatoon 3 at this point before I really get back into the series again. But Splatoon 2 exists, and this is something that is not a problem with this was not a problem with the second game, because the second game was for a brand new console. A new console that way more people bought compared to the Wii U, so it made sense that game was going to do well. But Splatoon 3 is weird because it's a new game, but it's a new multiplayer. It's a new multiplayer game on a console that already has one. You know, because here's the thing. For the most part, there are exceptions, but for the most part, generally speaking, Nintendo consoles get one game per series, and that's it. You gotta wait till the next one. You know, we get one 3D Mario, one 3D Zelda, one Splatoon, one Mario Kart, one Smash. You know, we get one installment. With the exception of Pokemon, of course. Pokemon gets a game like every year, every other year. But aside from Pokemon, and maybe some sports games or Mario parties, when it comes to like the core big titles, like again, your 3D Mario, your 3D Zelda, your Splatoon, your Smash, you know, stuff like that, even like Star Fox and Metroid, it tends to be, for the most part, one game per system. But Splatoon has broken that mold. And I guess now Xenoblade as well, because of course Xenoblade 3 is on the same console as 2. But you know, we have Mario Odyssey. We have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Yeah, it's not a real new entry, whatever. We got the DLCs. It's here whether you like it or not. Okay. We got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We got Odyssey. We got Smash Ultimate. Okay. So, here's the thing, though. You might say, okay, well, hold on. What about Breath of the Wild 2? Wouldn't that be the one that breaks the mold? But here's the thing that's different. Zelda has done multiple games on the same console before. In fact, they've been doing that since the N64. You know, the N64, the big N64 Zelda is Ocarina of Time, which I actually just finished streaming over on Twitch for the first time in years. And then we got Majora's Mask. And then on the GameCube, we had Wind Waker. You know, Wind Waker is the GameCube Zelda. And then at the very end, when the Wii came out, we got Twilight Princess, which still came out on the GameCube and was announced for the GameCube. But most people think of it as a Wii game. Most people think of it as a Wii game because it launched with the Wii. And it was marketed for the Wii, even though it did come out on the GameCube still. But then, later on in the generation, near the end, we got Skyward Sword, which was the true, like Skyward Sword was the true Zelda game of the Wii. It was exclusive to the Wii, it was made for the Wii, no GameCube, no Wii U even, just the Wii. Then fast forward all the way to 2017, and finally, after like 3 delays, Breath of the Wild finally comes out on Wii U. and the Switch. Yeah, see, this is where the pattern of 2 Zelda games per console is broken. It kind of well, again, assuming you count the cross-gen stuff as like a game, if you count the cross-gen stuff like Twilight Princess, then this is where the mold kind of gets broken, because now the Wii U only got 1 Zelda. Yeah, not counting the HD ports or any, like they only got 1 real Zelda game at the literal very end of the generation. It took them the entirety of the Wii U's lifespan to put out Breath of the Wild, and it still came out on Wii U. And I bought the Wii U version. I couldn't get a Switch day one because they were impossible to get. Yeah, I remember when the Switch was like impossible to get for the first like month or so. Does it sound familiar? Well, except replace the first month with the first year. I may be lucky enough to have a PS5, but oh man, the PS5 compared to the Switch, it's night and day in terms of availability. The Switch was only a problem for like a month. The PS5 has been a problem for over a year. But anyways, I'm getting off track here. My main analogy with all this is, and of course, Breath of the Wild, again, the same thing as Twilight Princess, where it was announced for the Wii U, but ended up coming out on the new console, even though it came out on the old console as well. And now people see it as a Switch. Breath of the Wild is going to be remembered as a Switch game, not a Wii U game. Even though it is a Wii U game, it was designed for the Wii U. And honestly, this might sound weird, but I actually kind of like playing on the Wii U more than the Switch, because it feels more impressive. When you're playing it on the Wii U, it's like, holy crap, they were able to get this game to work on the Wii U with its 2 gigs of RAM and its pathetic piece of junk even back then when it first came out. Tri-core, its tri-core PowerPC processor that was like worse than the 360's processor. To be fair, not that the PS4 and Xbox One were much better in that regard. The PS4 and Xbox One also had pathetic CPUs, although obviously they were still a lot better than the Wii U's with, the infamous AMD Jaguar cores that held the generation back. You couldn't get a solid frame rate in a lot of games because of the Jaguar cores. But hey, now we got Zen 2 in the current consoles though, so I guess it all worked out in the end. But again, I'm getting off track. We're supposed to talk about Splatoon here, and here I am getting sidetracked over and over again. I told you this was going to be a off-the-cuff discussion where I could get distracted easily. Okay. Okay. So, and obviously we got Breath of the Wild 2 coming. So my entire point of that whole thing I was trying to get at was Zelda has been the main one where we've gotten 2 per console. There have been, we had Galaxy 1 and 2 on the Wii, so again, it's not perfect, but generally speaking, we get 1 of the major franchise releases per console, with the exception of maybe 3D Zelda, where we get, where we might get a second one, and this is obviously one of them. But that was it. We never got it for most of the others. For the most part, again, Zelda might be the exception, and hell, even Mario has been the exception in the past. I know there's a lot of people out there that are still holding out hope for an Odyssey 2 for the Switch, but that's a whole other conversation. But generally speaking, for the most part, for the major franchises, 1 game per console. Zelda, okay, that made sense, because Breath of the Wild was extremely popular, it was a huge, huge success. And the Switch was insanely popular, so sure, doing another game makes sense. That doesn't feel weird. Splatoon is different, because Splatoon's a multiplayer game. A game that is designed to keep you playing for years, even though obviously they will stop updating the game at some point. So, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, okay, going way back to the original point I was trying to make, the whole, why aren't people excited for this game? The first reason being Nintendo's lackluster marketing, and the second reason being Splatoon 2 already exists and it's still just fine. And unlike a Zelda or a 3D Mario or something like that, Splatoon's a multiplayer game. People still play Splatoon on the regular. Maybe not as much as they used to, but I know there are people out there that still play Splatoon 2 on the regular 5 years after, nearly 5. It's not actually 5 years yet, but almost 5 years after release. But Breath of the Wild, people played Breath of the Wild for a long time. But those are single player games. There's only so many times you can go back to them. especially for like the simpler ones, like Odyssey. You're not going to be playing Odyssey all the time anymore. People still play Breath of the Wild because there's a lot you can do in Breath of the Wild. People are still finding exploits and glitches 5 years later. It's crazy, but at the end of the day, those are single player games. So you're not going to be coming back to them as often as a multiplayer game. Multiplayer games, especially nowadays, are designed to keep you playing as long as humanly possible. So, what? Man, this discussion is a complete mess. What I'm trying to say is this. People don't care that much because the game isn't necessary in the eyes of the general consumer. Obviously, Splatoon fans like me, like myself, we're gonna want any new content we can get. Of course, we're gonna be excited for a new game, but to the general consumer, it's gonna be like, I don't need to get Splatoon 3. I'm perfectly fine with Splatoon 2 because it's still a perfectly good game, and plenty of people have it, and plenty of people are still gonna be playing it even after 3 comes out. Basically, what this all boils down to is people would be more excited for this game if it was on a new console. Like if Splatoon 3 was saved for the Switch 2, then people would be more excited. But because it's just on the Switch still, and the general impression of the game so far, even though there are a lot of new things, obviously, like the graphics, for example, the jump from Splatoon 1 to 2 was actually pretty big. That you might not remember it being that big, but trust me, go back to Splatoon 1 and then boot up Splatoon 2. You will be surprised how much better the game looks. I mean, Splatoon 1 is by no means an ugly game. It still looks pretty decent, especially if you're playing on like an emulator where you can crank the resolution all the way up. It still looks pretty decent. But Splatoon 2 looks like at least 2 to 3 times better than the first game. They really did improve the graphics quite a bit in the second game. The third game looks exactly the same. And this, I guess, brings us to the third reason why people aren't excited. Number 1, Nintendo's lackluster marketing. The second reason, Splatoon 2 already exists and is good enough for most people. And the third reason, they haven't shown enough to get the general consumer excited. Because I have seen a lot of people say that Splatoon 3 looks like Splatoon 2.5. That looks like it's just the same game, basically. Which, to be fair, I did hear some people say that about the second game. I do remember people talking about how Splatoon 2 was kind of just Splatoon 1.5. And at the end of the day, that is pretty much what it is. It doesn't make any radical changes. Splatoon 2 is great, obviously, but it doesn't make any radical changes to the gameplay or anything like that. It's pretty much just more Splatoon. And if that's what you wanted, then that's fine. But if you want something big and different, then you're not going to get that from Splatoon 2. But the difference with Splatoon 3 is I can tell, even from the little we have seen of the game, I can tell they're doing more with Splatoon 3 than what they did with Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 is basically just, Splatoon 1.5, but on the Switch with better graphics. And it was good, but that's all it really was. But Splatoon 3, I can tell, is taking things a step further. It's still Splatoon. It's not going to be that different. But I can tell that they're trying to justify the existence of a sequel on the same console. I can tell they're trying to do that. Because we got a completely new area, this being the Splatlands as opposed to Inkopolis in the previous 2 games. We got completely different areas. Like, in the previous 2 games, most of the maps were in the city. And while those are still going to be a thing, obviously, but we've seen desert maps and like other maps that are in locations that aren't strictly in the city. That's another big differentiating factor. And also the campaign looks to be a decent shakeup compared to the previous 2 campaigns. So you can tell they're definitely pushing the series forward, but are they pushing it forward enough for the general average consumer to care? That's the problem. Because if all the game is really going to appeal to is the Splatoon fans, well, that might be okay, but it's not going to be the breakout hit that the first or even second game was, The first game was a big breakout hit, and the second game as well, thanks to the Switch especially. But the third game, I feel like the third game is gonna come out, and people are gonna like it, but they're not gonna talk about it. That's another thing I've noticed. This isn't a Splatoon 3 problem. This is just a Splatoon problem. Is no one really talks about the series at all. Like, people talk about Mario, people talk about Zelda, people talk about Pokemon, people talk about Smash, people talk about all these other franchises, but Splatoon, even though Splatoon is, again, it's not up there with those series, but it's not far behind. Okay, so like, if 3D Mario, 3D Zelda, no, not even, just Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Smash, if those are all, and Mario Kart, yeah, I'll go as far as to say Mario Kart, because Mario Kart is absolutely huge. It's big enough to rival Mario itself. It's that big. Why do you think everyone wanted the Mario Kart 9 so badly? That's how big it is. Those are like your S-tier Nintendo franchises, the ones that will generate the most hype, the most discussion, the one that people care the most about. Splatoon is like an A-. It's an A-. It's pretty big, especially for how young it is, but it's not as big as those. But there's another problem. I guess this brings us to, probably our final real point here. So, number 1, Nintendo's lackluster marketing. Number 2, the second game is still just fine. Third, the new game isn't really wowing people. And the fourth reason, the fan base for Splatoon that does exist is mainly in Japan. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people that like Splatoon in the West, but they're not as vocal about it. Like, the vocal Splatoon fan base, like the real core of the community, is in Japan. Like, when I say Splatoon blew, like, when I say Splatoon was a breakout hit, I mean, like, it definitely was a hit in the West, but it was a really big hit in Japan. Why do you think we got all those, like, Japanese crossovers? Like, we got the Squid Girl, like, crossover outfit in the first game and stuff like that. There's a reason, because that series was, from the get-go, was insanely popular in Japan. We've had those concerts. I'm sure we've all seen those videos of like the Splatoon concerts in Japan. Like, the only other series I can think of that has gotten like concerts like on a semi-regular basis that's on kind of a similar wavelength is maybe like Persona. Like, we get the Persona concerts every couple of years. Well, Splatoon has that in Japan, and Splatoon's a newer franchise than Persona. So, oh man, so, yeah. This discussion's been a mess. Honestly, I might end up unlisting this one after the fact, to be honest. I'm not even sure if it's going to be worth keeping up. I think it's a bit too scatterbrained for my liking. Maybe I'll just end up making a proper video on this at some point. That's like only 5 minutes long or something, because I really don't need to drag this as much as I have, but I don't know, we'll see what happens. But point is this. This is their big game of the year, or at least one of their big games of the year. And I feel like it has not gotten the respect it deserves from both Nintendo themselves and as well as just the community in general. It feels like no one really cares about this game, and that feels really wrong for how big and notable this franchise is supposed to be. And again, is it as big as some of the others? No. But I feel like it's big enough to warrant talking about it more. It's big enough to be like a headline title. Because it is. It is a headline title. Here's kind of the last thing I guess I can really say in regards to why aren't they talking more about it. I think the main reason they're not talking about it is because now it's coming out in September. So they're going to wait a little longer before giving us the big blowout. But I'm wondering if another reason why they're not doing it is also because they already have the second game. This isn't like when Splatoon 2 came out where, there was no backwards compatibility with Wii U games because of the completely different architecture and not having a disc slot and everything. Which, by the way, will not be a thing on the next console. This is a little side tangent here, but I've seen a lot of people that are like, nah, the next console's not going to have backwards compatibility. And I'm like, are you serious? Of course it's going to have it. And people will say, whoa, but there was no Wii U backwards compatibility on the Switch. Yeah, that's because the Wii U and the Switch are two completely different freaking consoles. The reason why we had GameCube, Wii, and Wii U kind of all... Okay, GameCube backwards compatibility wasn't officially supported on the Wii U, but the reason why all those systems were kind of intercompatible is because they all shared the same architecture, and they all had disc slots. That's not the case on the Switch. The Switch was a completely clean break, completely from scratch, for better or for worse. That will not be the same next time around. When the Switch 2 comes out, the Switch 2, that sucker is going to 100% have full backwards compatibility with Switch cartridges, Switch digital games, all the NSO stuff will carry over. It's going to be like nothing even changed. And I mean that in the best way possible. It's going to be like when you went from the 3DS, from the DS to the 3DS. Or when you went from the Wii to the Wii U, where all your stuff carried over with you, one way or another. I 100% think that's going to happen. We're going to get, the console's going to have a similar form factor to the first one. It's going to have the same cartridge slot. Maybe they'll do it with the 3D. You know how the 3DS cartridges have that little notch on them so you can't put them in a regular DS? Maybe they'll do that for the Switch 2 carts so you can't put them in the regular Switch. But, you'll be able to put your cartridges in. You'll be able to transfer all your digital games. Yes, you heard me right. I actually think that you're going to be able to carry over all that stuff. I don't see why you wouldn't, especially when they've been making a big deal about the Nintendo account being able to carry into the future. For everyone that's paranoid about their digital purchases on Nintendo consoles, especially with the Wii U and 3DS stuff shutting down in the future, I totally understand. I really do. Believe me, Nintendo is probably the worst when it comes to digital carryover and stuff like that. But I can tell that you're going to be able to carry your stuff over because they're making a big deal about that in their darn it, what's the word? Shareholders meetings and stuff, like the financial reports. They're making a big deal about Nintendo accounts and how Nintendo accounts are the way forward and how everything is going to be synced to your Nintendo account and you'll be able to carry over everything in the future. So if you bought a game on the Switch, you'll be able to play it on the Switch too. I guarantee it. Okay, I can already tell this whole thing is gonna get scrapped. I can already tell. I can already tell this entire discussion is gonna get scrapped. But anyways, so let's just end things here. We've been going on for like an hour now, and frankly, I'm just gonna end up scrapping this whole thing. We're gonna scrap this discussion, and I'm gonna do something else. We'll talk. I do want to talk about this, but I feel like we've dragged it out way too long and it hasn't been structured all that well. I should just make a video on it. It's 5 minutes long or something. I mean, why not? I mean, if I'm not going to put out the Smash videos, I might as well put something out there, and that's one thing I can put out. So, long story short, I feel like this game has not been talked about enough. It hasn't gotten the promotion it deserves. It hasn't gotten the respect it deserves. I feel like this game is the black sheep of the 2021 lineup. I feel like more people are excited for just about every other game than this one. More people are excited for Strikers than this. More people are excited for Xenoblade than this. More people are probably even excited for Scarlet and Violet than this. Okay, maybe not Three Hopes. Three Hopes has probably got less excitement than this, but for the most part, I feel like Kirby, when that came out a couple months ago, that got more hype than this. And I get it, that was the big 3D entry in the series and everything, but I don't know. So well, we'll just call it with that. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna end up redoing this at some point. It's a proper video because this whole discussion was kind of a mess. But if you did enjoy it regardless and you kind of understood what I was trying to say, then thanks, I guess. But yeah, we're gonna go and just call it. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about the whole situation with Splatoon 3? Do you agree with me that they haven't been talking about it enough and that it hasn't really gotten the respect it deserves? Or do you think that I'm blowing this out of proportion, that once we get the big blowout at not E3 or whatever, that this whole thing won't matter and we'll all be good, I guess, feel free to let me know, even though this probably won't be up for that much longer. So, I guess, yeah, we're going to end up redoing this at some point as a proper video, but oh well. So, I guess with that being said, this is Logan59XP. I'll see you guys next time.